All right. Good morning and good afternoon. This is Matt Schwegler with the Infrared Training Center. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar on the basics of FLIR Thermal Studio. I should mention, too, our training schedule for the U.S. and Canada. You can go to infraredtraining.com/schedule for our level 1, level 2, level 3 thermography classes. We'll be starting back up here in the future, near future, again with live training. So you can check out those dates coming up for May and the rest of the year. At least that's the plan right now. And same thing in Europe at irtraining.eu. Once we resume training, we will get you guys back up there and out, get the certification classes going again. But for now, I wanted to fill the time here with some webinar material, and that's why we've got Jason Gagnon on today to talk about the basics of FLIR Thermal Studio.
Okay, welcome everyone. Glad you're able to join us today. Hopefully you can see my screen okay. As I said, it's an overview of the Thermal Studio software, and I'm going to just run through the PowerPoint just to give you kind of a general overview of the features and in particular some of the differences between the starter version and the pro version. And hopefully, you know, this might answer some questions about that. And then once we're done with that, we'll open up the software and start using the software and analyze some images. Thermal Studio is the latest software package that FLIR offers for processing images, sequence recordings, MPEG videos, and creating inspection reports. You can analyze thermal images, radiometric JPEGs using this software. It contains a comprehensive set of tools that you can use. Spot meters, areas, you can change your color palettes. So we'll run through all of these once we get the software up and running. You can also process radiometric sequences, SEQ files and CSQ files. These are essentially movies containing thermal images with temperature information. And some of the cameras have this feature. They're called CSQs in the camera. You can record to the SD card. Software like Tools Plus and Researcher can record SEQ files directly to the PC. You can also edit non-radiometric videos, MPEG videos from, say, a GF320 or T540. A lot of the cameras can record MPEGs and perhaps CSQ videos. You can create custom templates and inspection reports. You can create batch jobs. So if you need to process, say, hundreds of images and make the same change to all those images, like you want to set the color palette to all your images, you can do that using these batch jobs. And there's also a live tab, so you can connect live to a radiometric camera that has a USB port. Okay, so there's just a quick snapshot of the key features. Now, it is a standalone program, so from the reporting side, this is different from what we've done for a long time. So if you've used Reporter before, if you've used Tools Plus, those all include a Word add-in. So you had to use Microsoft Word to create the reports and the templates. This software is completely standalone, so there's no dependence on any Microsoft products. There is a Pro and a Starter. I'll explain that more as we go. There's a demo version as well. It's not time limited, but it will put like a watermark on your images until you buy the license, and it will unlock it. The reports can be easily exported to PDF and XPS, both very common formats. And it is downloadable from the link shown here. So you can just go to support.flir.com/Thermal Studio. There's also some documentation there that can help you out, particularly if you're new to the software. All right. Now, the user interface itself is divided up into 5 different tabs. The Home tab contains some links to some commonly used functions. That's what all those buttons are for on the Welcome tab, the Welcome section. You can also access some settings, some important settings from that Home tab, which I'll mention in just a second here. The Library tab shows your File Explorer. So all the files on your PC, and that's where you can go and find the images and the sequences that you want to edit. This is different from FLIR tools if you've used that software, where we had a library, but you had to add folders to it. So they were almost like shortcuts. Here, it just shows you everything. So you see all your drives, all your folders, and you just go where you want, find the images, and work with them. So in some ways, it's a little bit easier that way. On the Reporting tab, this is where you can create your templates and you can edit your reports. The Batch tab is where you can create those batch jobs. And finally, the Live tab is where you can connect to a camera. If you want to view a real-time image, you can grab a snapshot, and with the Pro version, you can actually do a recording. Okay. Now, from the Home tab, there's a Settings button, and this contains some important settings, some things you might want to check out right away before you start using the software. In particular, the regional settings. This is where you can set your preferred language, your temperature, and your distance units. Currently, we support 22 different languages. So that's right here on the Regional tab. The Output folder is the path for the batch processes. So if you start using the batch functions, what it does is basically edits the original images and makes a copy to this output folder. So check that out, make sure you know where they're going before you start batch processing. You can change it, but it always puts them into that folder. All right. Also on the Settings button, there are some overlay tabs. So this controls the graphics overlay that you see on the JPEGs. So for example, the table that you see over here and the scale and the way these appear on that overlay image is fully controllable here with these check boxes. It doesn't affect, I should say, the radiometric portion of the image. So if you open a JPEG in the software to measure temperatures and analyze it, you see the pure radiometric image. This controls what you see if you open the image in like File Explorer or some other third-party editor. So this here is an example of just same image with two different overlay settings. The one on the left is configured to show the scale, the table, the results table, the spot meters, and the logo. One on the right, we turned everything off except for the two spots. So that's the level of control you have over how that looks. So, you can clear the image off completely, so no scale, no table, and even the logo. All right. We've never really had that level of control with any of our software, so it's kind of a cool feature. The reason why there are two tabs there is because one of them is for the batch results. So if you did a batch and you wanted to change some of that, that's controllable on the Batch tab. The other tab is just for like single images, so you can have different controls for different processes. Now, some of the key features. I mentioned earlier some of the measurement capabilities. This toolbar is where you can find all of your measurement functions. So when you edit an image in the library and click on this button here, it shows you all of the measurement functions that you have available to you. So if you've used our software before, these are very, very common measurement functions in the software and the cameras: spot meters, lines, rectangles. We have a polygon tool, and we also have something called a magic wand. This is new for our software, and it is unique to the Pro version. So you won't have this with the starter version. Basically what it does is it selects a region. So if you pick that tool and you click on a pixel, it selects a region of pixels. that are the same temperature within a certain tolerance that you can set. So it's kind of like an automatic polygon. And a lot of graphics software has this type of tool, but it's based on color levels. This is based on temperatures. And I'll show you that once we get into the software. But all your measurement functions are right here on that button. This is for your color palette, changing your palette. This here is where you can change your color distribution. So histogram, linear, there's some other modes there that you can experiment with. Also on this toolbar, you can rotate the image. And you can adjust the fusion mode. Now, tools also allowed you to do this. So if you have a fusion image, whether it's MSX, picture-in-picture, or whatever, you can change to the various modes. And you know, you have the same options. Basically, the one unique thing here is that you can adjust the alignment. So if you have that selected, it allows you to shift the thermal image so it matches, it lines up with the visual image. And we've had a lot of requests for this in the past, so I'm happy to say that we have the ability to do this now in Thermal Studio. And the last button shows you a profile plot. All right. This is a line profile, so nice thing here is that you can do it on with the image, so to speak, instead of just in the report like we had to do with Tools Plus. All right, so that's just a quick snapshot of some of these analysis functions. I mentioned the sequence editing, SEQ and CSQ editing. Anytime you open one of these files, you'll have this small toolbar down at the bottom. And this shows you a quick description of what the buttons do. So you can loop the sequence. You can save a snapshot, a radiometric frame from that sequence. You can mark the sequence, which uses these little slider bars here to set the portion that you want. And you can save that marked portion as a new sequence file. The MPEG editor, it's very similar as far as the buttons and what they do. The main difference is that it's not a radiometric video, it's just a color video, but you can save a snapshot from it. You can mark the portion, you can save that segment out of the video. And what's kind of cool is that it shows the GPS coordinates. So if you have GPS enabled on your camera and you hit record, it tags every frame with the GPS data. It shows it in the editor here, and as you play that video, it actually will move. So it kind of tracks where you were. So this is another thing that we've never really had this level of detail in any of our software for MPEG videos. You always had to play it in something else. So the ability to do this in our software and see the GPS data and grab, you know, like snapshots from it is really nice. This is your reporting tab. So when you go to that tab, you'll always see all of these different functions, and there's a lot of stuff here. But just to kind of group them or give you a quick summary of the different areas. This region is where you would go if you want to insert a thermal image onto the page, a photo, any kind of graphics type file is where this is the group for that. The box here is where you can add arrows and markers. So all of that's grouped into the image group. This is where you can insert tables and fields. Similar in concept to our other reporting software, where you can display information in a custom table that you can configure, or you can add individual fields that link to the thermal image. So conceptually, it's the same idea as Reporter and Tools Plus. So on these buttons, you can insert kind of an automatic table that links to the image. You can insert a blank table, and this is all your individual thermal fields. Can add graphs like profile and histogram. One thing to keep in mind, profile and histogram are unique to Pro, so you won't have those in the starter version. You can create and edit text annotations. There is a formula editor here, but again, just Pro only. And the starter version is limited to 5 custom templates. With Pro, there's really no limit, but starter is limited. And the template editor, this is pretty standard. You can add front and back pages. You can create very large reports. This overcomes a limitation that we had for a while with Reporter and Tools Plus. And you can create reports using this rapid report shortcut. So if you wanted to just make a report real quick, you can go to your folder, drag and drop onto a shortcut, and you don't even have to open the software. It'll just go right into it and make your report. The batch processing, this I mentioned earlier, this allows you to apply settings uniformly kind of across a group of images. And there are a lot of options in here. I'll run through some of them a little bit once we get into the software, but these are just some of the common functions. You can automatically set scale limits and color palette. You can export radiometric images from a sequence. You can export to CSV format. You can apply overlay. You can apply measurements. So there's a lot here, but it is a very powerful feature. If you're processing a lot of images, it could save you a lot of time. This is a very detailed overview. I'm not going to go through all these bullets, but the important thing here is I highlighted the starter options specifically in red. So what's shown in red here is available in starter. Well, in starter. Pro has everything. So tried to make that clear here. Here's more. So obviously you can see there's a lot that you can do here. So starter, you can change emissivity, distance. You can add minimum, maximum, and clear all measurements. On the Live tab, if you've used FLIR tools before, even Researcher, you can connect in real time to those some of the cameras with that software. So again, it's kind of similar to those programs. You can connect live, you can control focus, you can kind of nuke the camera, autofocus, you can adjust parameters. There is a live temporal plot that you can do, which is kind of nice. In Starter, you can save a frame, a radiometric image from the live stream. With Pro, you can record sequences. So very much like Tools Plus and Researcher, it's the same file format. Now, plugins are unique to Pro. These are basically add-ons, modules that you can purchase separately that literally plug into Thermal Studio. So one of the recent plugins that was released is called a route creator. And this basically allows you to build an inspection route in the software. So you can kind of map out your inspection based on how you typically would go at your facility. You can really map it out very specifically. You can send that into a compatible camera. It will guide you through the process. And then when you get back, you import it into the software. Currently, it supports the T500s and the T800s with the latest firmware. And it is available as a yearly subscription. And over time, we'll be developing some other plugins. So this is something that, again, is unique to the Pro version. You won't have the ability to add plugins with Starter. And this is a kind of a snapshot of what Starter here has compared to Pro. So it shows, so you know, from the reporting side of it, you can have 5 templates. There's no profile, no histogram, and no formulas. Okay, no magic wand. These show some of the batch limits. There's no recording. with the live view, and there are no plugins with Starter. This is available in the manual, this summary, if you're interested. Now the licensing. We don't have a free version of Thermal Studio. So with the Starter and Pro, there are a couple of different licensing modes. The perpetual license is a one-time purchase. So it can run on a standalone PC. There's no internet connection required. With the perpetual license, you will get updates like bug fixes, things like that, but you won't get any feature updates. That requires a subscription. So there's two licensing models. With the subscription model, it has to be renewed yearly. It requires an internet connection. You'll receive updates and upgrades. So if a new feature is released, you'll get that automatically as part of the subscription. Now, the Starter version is only offered as a perpetual license. So we don't have a subscription model for the Starter version, but Pro has the subscription option. Now, because it's yearly, if you don't renew it, it will revert to the Starter version. So you won't lose it completely, but you'll lose the Pro features. And it does need to connect to the internet periodically. So the main difference between perpetual and subscription is that the perpetual is just a one-time purchase. The subscription, it must be renewed to keep all of the Pro features. And finally, I just want to mention this because I might mention the support center a few times here throughout the presentation. If you have any questions about the software, any problems with the software, questions about the cameras, anything like that, it's best to direct those questions to the support site, support.flir.com. There is a list of FAQs there. You can download manuals and software and data sheets. You can find service offices there. And you can ask questions through the site. And it's a global system, so we have support reps all over, and they'll be able to communicate with you and try to answer your questions or resolve the problems. So it's a good resource. There's a lot of good information on the site. So any kind of technical questions, check out the support site. It's a good thing. Okay. All right, that's the end of that. Let's bring up the software. Take a quick look at some of what we were talking about here. Let's see.
Jason, while we're bringing up the software there, I had a question that came in from Grayson. I wonder if I could ask you right now.
Yeah, no problem.
If you purchase the Pro version, the Pro perpetual license, will there be an option to purchase upgrades down the road?
If it's a perpetual license, probably not. Okay. I don't know 100% on that. But the perpetual license is just typically just a one-time purchase. It is kind of as is, if just, so to speak. So you'll get the bug fixes and things, maintenance updates and things, but I don't think there'll be any way to upgrade features.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Alrighty, so here we are. This is Thermal Studio Pro. You can see right now I'm in the Library tab, and this is showing several different thermal images. So we can just double click on any one of these. Brings up the image editor. Okay. And the layout of this is kind of similar to FLIR tools if you've used that software before. All your information is shown over on the right, like measurement information, parameters. It's all consolidated into this one table. Down at the bottom is where you can adjust your scale. And you just slide this brackets back and forth, you can manually adjust it. So this really isn't all that different from what we had in FLIR tools. But you do have full control over your scale, your color palette right up here. And you can also adjust the scale regionally or locally. So for example, if I auto adjust this image, I can double click in between the brackets and it auto spans the image. Same way the cameras work, but the auto span includes everything. So it looks at the cold areas here, the warmer areas, and sometimes it can give you a span that's a little bit too wide, so you lose some detail in the image. So you can adjust that manually to try to tune it in. We call thermal tuning in the thermography classes. But there's a feature here that allows you to create a small rectangle. So it auto adjusts only inside that rectangle. So if we put it up here, we can't see anything, right? Because it's only adjusting within that box. But if we come down here and widen that a little bit, you can start to see a little more detail in that roof, like something might be going on there. But with the auto adjust, that's something that you might overlook. Okay, so any kind of situation like this, if you're doing outdoor electrical work and looking up, it's a clear day or something and you hit save, if it's set to auto adjust, it's going to take into account the cold sky and whatever you're looking at. So the span might be a little bit too wide. So that local adjust is pretty handy because you can just put the box around what you're interested in and it does the rest of the work for you. Okay. So that is right under this button here, the auto adjust control. Also up here is where you can change your fusion modes. So if we set it to MSX mode, this shows, actually let me change images here for a second. I think this one kind of shows this well. This image right now is set to MSX. So it's showing the visual camera artifacts overlaid on top of the thermal image. So if we change the modes to thermal only, you can see a lot of that goes away. So this here is the pure thermal image without any of the visual camera properties. So as long as you have some sort of fusion image, you can change these modes. And these are just different ways that it combines the images. Now, the alignment function. So if this was misaligned and you wanted to try to fix that, we can select this checkbox. And that shows a little rectangle, kind of similar to the scale adjust that I just showed. So you can drag this and it shifts the photo, see? So you can really easily correct for any misalignment in the image. And when you get it to where you want it, just hit the check mark and there you go. All right. So that's very unique to this software. On this toolbar right over here, this is where you can find the measurement functions. I mentioned this in the presentation as well. So you can add spot meters, lines, rectangles. So the spot meter just measures a single point on the image. Over in the table here, it shows the temperature value. You have rectangle. Again, these are nothing new really. We've had these types of tools for a long time. One thing that's kind of nice here that we didn't have in some of the other software is the ability to create a duplicate of a measurement tool. So it creates an exact copy, in this case, of the area box. So if you wanted to have a couple of boxes, that were the exact same size. Whoops, keep resizing it accidentally, but you can create a duplicate, and it does just that. So whether it's an ellipse or any kind of shape, you can always right-click, create duplicate. You can also rename them. That's what this is. So instead of BX1 or whatever the default is, I can call it box whatever, put some numbers in there or whatever. And it changes it also in the table over here. So if you were to create a report, it would save that file name or that tool name. So, all right. So some other options on the right-click menu that you might want to check out. Export to CSV is another one. So if you wanted to get a CSV file from that area, like a text file that you can open in Excel, export to CSV will do that. And to delete a tool, it's also on the right-click menu. The ellipse is just the same type of shape, just a elliptical version of an area. We have delta T, which is temperature difference. We have polygon, which this allows you to trace a shape manually. So anytime you click on the image, it puts another point in the shape. So you can very precisely outline any kind of a shape. When you get to the end, you right-click and it ends it there. And you can reposition any of these points to resize the shape. Now, the magic wand is kind of an automatic polygon. So let me change to a different image. So I think this one kind of demonstrates this pretty well. So if we use the magic wand here and we click down in this area, the cold water here in the cup, it automatically selects all of the pixels within that region that are the same essentially as the pixel I clicked on within a certain tolerance level. That tolerance is set over on the right in the measurements table. So right here, there's a little slider bar. If I slide it to the left, it selects fewer pixels. To the right, it selects more. So, and again, if you've ever used any kind of photo editing software, most of them have some sort of a magic wand type feature like this, but it's just based on colors. It will select a region of pixels that are close to the same color level. So this is the exact same concept, except it's temperature based instead of just color based. And over here, if I do the same thing, click on the warmer areas, it selects that region. So it's a nice way to create a quick custom polygon shape, and you can always resize it. So if it's not quite what you want, it adds all these points here, so you can resize the points. And again, if you right click on it, you get a lot of the same options that you get with the other tools, such as create duplicate, export as CSV.
Jason, pardon me, I had a question that came in from Jonathan about the magic wand feature. Is that only available in the Pro version?
Yes,
okay,
that is correct. Yeah, that's one unique thing specific to Pro. You have all these other tools in the starter version. Yep. All right, so that covers all the measurement tools that you have here in the software. If we draw a line here, we can, oops, let me just position it down here a little bit. we can draw or add a profile graph. Change the color a little here. Should show up a little bit better that way. So this is just a spatial profile, basically, from point A to point B of how the temperature is changing across that line. And it will adjust automatically as you move it around. So, again, you have the export function. So if you wanted to get the text, a text version of that, it would export every point on that line. All right. Okay, so that's just a quick overview of all the analysis features that you have. So you can measure temperatures. There's a variety of tools here that you can use. Change your palette. There are some isotherms that you can add, like an above, below isotherm. Color distribution. This is your adjust control button. You can crop the image. I didn't show that, but if you wanted to like literally crop an image up, you could do that pretty easily here. This is the image rotate, and your fusion button is right here. Okay. All right, now in the PowerPoint, I mentioned some of the batch processing that you have available to you in the software. These functions are all accessible from this tab here. And the way that the screen is laid out, all of the jobs that you can apply to an image are shown down here. So it groups them by image, sequence, scale, units, annotations, parameters. So there's obviously a lot here that you can do. The output target sets what you're going to get out after the batch. The default is radiometric JPEG. So whether you pick anything up here, like if you can add this if you want, but you don't have to. If you're operating on a radiometric image, you're making changes to it, that's what you get out. But you have some other options here. Like if you wanted to batch export everything to CSV files, say like 100 images, you wanted to get the text versions of those. That's what the export to CSV will do. You can do non-radiometric overlay, basically like a non-radiometric JPEG. You can extract a visual image from a fusion image. You can create an AVI video from a series of JPEGs, so it'd be kind of like basically like a movie of all the images that you put into the batch. You can create a map, which is, I'll show that in a second. That's kind of cool. And you can create some graphs. So these are all the things that you can get out of it after the batch. And again, there's a lot of options here. So I'll go through a couple of scenarios just so you can get an idea how you would set it up and make this happen. So let's say that I had some images. They were all set to a different color palette. I want to set them all to the same exact palette. So first thing I want to do here is add the palette function and choose the palette. So I'm going to make them all iron palette. Okay. Now, the second thing I want to do is make the scale the same. So I want them all to have the same minimum temperature and maximum temperature on the scale. So for that, I can add scale minimum and scale maximum. And then obviously we have to set what we want it to be. So let me show you the images I want to work with first. So this is the folder I'm going to use. So as you can see, as we scroll through these, the color palette's different, and the scale is different for all of these images. Here, let me turn the graph off. Okay. So if I wanted to apply a scale to these images, they're all from around 0C up to around probably 68, 70C, somewhere in that range. Yeah, something like that. Okay, so let me go back. Go back to my batch tab, and we'll put it to, say, like -10 or so. And for the max, what do we do? We'll just do 90. Try that. All right. So now it's set up for iron. I got my scale set the way I want. So we'll go next. So next step is to add the files we want to use. Let me clear these first. Okay. So you can use the Shift key to select images like that. Or if we go back to the root folder, yeah, right here, I can click this folder and just drag the whole thing over. Okay. If I go to next, now it's going to start processing those images. And as it does this, you can kind of see the result right here in this thumbnail. So there's my scale. You can see that they're all using the iron palette. Now also, because the overlay settings, it's showing the scale and the logo and the coordinates here. So we may not want that. So let me pause this or stop it. We'll just stop it completely. Let me go back a couple of steps. And here's a good tip. If you're going to run a batch again more than once, you can save it and reopen it, so you don't have to go through all the setup steps again. So I'm going to, oops, it should save. All right, it doesn't. Okay, well.
Jason, while you're there for a second, I do have a question coming in from Gary about the batch feature.
Mm-hmm.
Can you specify histogram equalization or temperature linear with that?
Yes, I believe so. Let me just save this real quick.
All right.
We'll just call it scale. Okay. Okay. So let's see. What was the question? It was histogram.
It was, yeah, the question was, can the batch feature specify histogram equalization or temperature linear? Is there a way to specify
The color distribution?
When you process the batch, how you do the palette distribution? Can you do it equalization or histogram or temperature linear? Was what he was asking.
Color distribution. Yeah, right there.
Okay.
Yep. So that's where you can pick those modes. Yep. Yep. Okay. So now back to what I was doing here before. So what I'm going to do is hit new. So I saved that batch job. I'm just going to hit new to kind of reset this so I can start again. But before I process it, I want to go to the Home tab. And I want to go to Settings, because I want to change those overlay settings. So I don't want to see any of this stuff on my images. I want them all to be blank. So I'm going to uncheck Overlay Enabled, so it's totally clean. Now I can close this. I can go back to my Batch tab. I can go open and hopefully open that file. See how this looks. There we go. Okay. Yep, it saved it. So I got my scale, everything set up. And so now I basically just repeat that process. They're already in the queue. And start. And now what it produces is just a clear image with no scale, no overlay, I should say. These are still radiometric. You still process them. It just doesn't have any of that overlay graphics. Now, again, there's a lot of images here. I'll probably just stop it, but you kind of get the idea of how you can take advantage of this feature in order to apply changes across a lot of images at once. You know, this is, again, another thing we've never really been able to easily do. You know, if you wanted to do this in FLIR tools, you sort of had to open each image and make the change and save. It was a bit tedious. So this is it's kind of a powerful feature. There's a couple other ones, a couple of functions here I'd like to show. Another one is the ability to apply measurements to a series of images. In Tools Plus, we had this feature in the template called predefined measurements, where you could set up a template with, say, a spot, an area box, and have that there automatically for all the reports. This effectively achieves the same thing, just in a different way. So let me demonstrate that here. In this folder, I have an image. Well, obviously several images, but an image in particular that has a spot. Let me add a couple. I'll just add 2 spots like that. So say, for example, that I just wanted to apply these 2 spots to all my images. So all you have to do there is put them where you want them to be. And then you can go over here on the side and say create jobs. So this adds all of these things here to a batch job. It sort of assumes that you want to change everything. So you have to trim this down a bit. So really all I want to do here is apply the spot meter to my images. So I can delete all the ones that I don't really care about. But you can, you know, again, the color distribution setting is here. You can leave that if you prefer everything to be linear versus histogram. Totally up to you. Just remove these. And the palette, why don't we change the palette just for fun? Okay, units. You can use a different approach to accomplish this. The one thing, like if you did this manually from these buttons, you would have to know the coordinates that the spots are located at. Oh, you know what? I didn't save. Hang on, I forgot to save the image. Yeah, that's my bad. Sorry, because I had 2 spots there. Save it. You got to save it first, then create the job. So now, okay, now I have the 2 spot meters. Okay, good. So let me just clear out all this. Leave palette, get rid of units. Okay. Alrighty. So now, if I go to the next step, I can select all of these other images that don't have any measurements on them. See, if I open one of these, it's totally blank, right? So if I go back to here, I can add all those, go to next, and as it processes, it should, it doesn't seem to be doing it. Oh, I know why. The overlay's still off. It doesn't show them. Hopefully it will show them when we edit the image. Here, let's stop that and make sure. These should be here. Yeah. Okay, good. Yep, they're there. So they look blank on the thumbnails. It's doing exactly what it should. I turned the overlay off, but the data is still there. The spots are there, so you can still edit them here in the library, and you can see they're all in the same place. So anytime you want to do this, first, the easiest thing to do is to start with the image. Start with one image, lay out the tools that you want, save the image, create the job, and then customize the job. And you can save that as a batch and reuse it. And just before you even make your reports, you could apply that to the images, set up your measurements the way you want, and then they'll look the way that you want in the report. So it's a sort of a different way to use predefined measurements. And all right, one other thing here. Let me do a new batch. Now we don't need to. Okay. So the map thing is kind of cool because this actually uses the GPS coordinates from your images to automatically create a map. There's really no settings for it. So if you wanted to do this, you just add the map to the job. We go to next. I have some images here that we just took in our office in New Hampshire, kind of just walking around the building. So I can add these. Okay. Add those to the batch, go to next. And I'm going to let this go through. Shouldn't take too long. So what it's doing, it scans the images, it pulls the GPS data from every image, and it marks the location on this map that it outputs. You can do this in the reports too. There is a similar function, they call it a summary map in the report. Doing it this way, it creates a separate graphic file. Almost there.
Is when you do have a chance, we're coming up on 12 o'clock, and I did have some questions coming in, and I just want to remind everybody that we'll be wrapping up soon, but if you do want to send those questions, you can chat those in, and also we'll take some, I think, live as well to sort of test that out. Neil and Grayson, I do have note of your questions, and we'll certainly be asking those here right out of the gate.
I'll wrap it up soon here. But this is another one of those kind of unique things where this is basically the output that you get. So it marks the file name for each image, and it shows you exactly kind of where you were when you took that. So from a record keeping standpoint, it's kind of a neat tool. Obviously you can see that with the batch functions, there's a lot of options here. So it's something to explore if you're working with a lot of images and you're looking to automate any of your processes. There's a lot here that you might be able to do that could make things a little bit easier for you. The last thing I'll touch on, I just want to mention the video capabilities here, because I did mention that in the PowerPoint. So the sequence recordings, again, the sequence format is nothing new. We've had this around for a while, going back to the old researcher software. It's the same basic idea. It's a radiometric video, so every frame is captured with temperature. So as you play it back, you can see that change. So not unlike an MPEG video, but where it's radiometric, you can actually measure temperatures on any one of these frames, and you can watch the temperatures change as the sequence plays. down on the bottom on that toolbar, you can save a snapshot. So if you wanted to put this image into a report or open it up in the file editor just as a JPEG, you can save a snapshot, and it's a radiometric image. But you can also mark an area. So if you had a really long sequence and you only wanted one small portion of it, just use these markers and select just that region, and then save that selection as a new file. Still radiometric, it just only contains the area you're interested in. Because these sequences, they're uncompressed, so particularly if you record them to the PC, they can eat up a lot of hard drive space. So if you don't need the whole thing, if there's only one little piece that you care about, that'd be the way to do that. You can just extract that and then maybe delete the original one. The MPEG editor, very similar. The buttons kind of work the same way. Again, it's more or less the file format that's the difference. MPEGs. All right. So it's not radiometric. It's really just a video. There's other software out there that can edit videos, but this here, you can grab a snapshot from it, you can mark it, you can save a small portion of it. So functionally it's the same. It's just all not radiometric. But what's cool here, again, with the GPS is this little map. So if you have the GPS enabled when you record, it tags every frame. So if you watch the map there, you can see it move. So it tracks where you were. And again, if it's kind of a record keeping thing, if you notice something in the video that you maybe missed and you want to know what the heck is that, that shows you exactly where it is on the GPS map. So again, not something that we've really been able to do before until this software. So, okay, I think we have to wrap it up here. I didn't get to the reporting part, but we have another webinar on reporting. I kind of wanted to touch on a few things that we hadn't done before here. And the
always do
live
that next
tab.
week too. We could throw something together for next Wednesday or something. Or
we could. I know there's a lot to this software. It's really hard to touch on everything, but it is very versatile.
Yeah. Looks like, Jason, looks like your audio just dropped out for a quick second there. I don't know if you can hear us.
I drop out.
Yeah, it dropped out just at the very end. That was actually kind of nice timing, but I didn't hear your last little bit there.
What happened here? What happened?
You're back now.
I am? Okay, good. All right.
Yeah, something happened. It looked like a bandwidth issue or something.
All right, sorry about that. Anyway, I think we can probably wrap it up and take some questions.
Okay, yeah, we can. Like I said, we can always put a webinar together for next week if people are interested in that. If you want to text us, chat with us on that, we'd certainly be up for it. I did have some questions that came in, so I will do that in a moment here. I'm just going to take back screen sharing for 1 second. I just want to plug, again, the website for those of you in Europe, the Middle East, or Africa. irtraining.eu is where you can go for the latest information on our training and other courses in that region. And then also, of course, in the US and Canada, infraredtraining.com/schedule. On social media, a few things. We have got coming up tomorrow, actually, Bill Schwan, ITC's Bill Schwan will be on with an SUAS overview. So we'll do that, I believe, at 11 o'clock Eastern time. That's -4 UTC. That'll be tomorrow. So if you want to join us for that, you're more than welcome. We'd love to have you on. And I think we'll do a couple more of these at least next week. And maybe one of those will be the software presentation, at least the template reporting. I'm planning on putting the recording of this up on at least our Facebook page and our YouTube page here later today. So if you want to watch this again or share it with friends or colleagues, you can go to facebook.com/infrared training or our YouTube page. I'll have this posted there as well. And for other webinars, we do have some on YouTube and then also on our website as well, infraredtraining.com/webinars. Good. Had some questions that came in. I do want to take some live as well. I'll start one off here though with Neil. Neil had asked us, and I don't know if Neil's still on. He is.
I don't know if you can you hear me, Matt?
I can, Neil. Yeah. What did you had a question about PCs and I think licenses? Is that right? Oop, let's try that again. There we go.
Hey, hello.
Yeah, your question was about PCs and licenses. Is that right?
Yeah, how many PCs can you put the software onto per license?
Can you hear me, Matt?
Yeah, I can hear you now, Jason.
All right, I'm having some mic problems. Sorry. You should be able to put it on 2 PCs per license, 2 activations.
Okay.
Crikey. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
No, thanks for the question. Let's see. Grayson was asking about earlier, and I can pull up Grayson here. Grayson, if you're on right now, I think you were inquiring about the Thermal Studio. Does it overwrite the original images? Is that correct?
Yeah, I just was wondering what it does with its edits.
So when you save an image, does it overwrite the file? Is sort of the question.
Yes.
Jason, did you hear that? Or
Okay. My system is kind of choppy here right now. I don't know if you can hear me, but you have the option to either save over the existing or save as if you want to. I don't know if you heard me.
yeah, we did. We did.
Okay, good. I'm sorry. It's kind of going in and out here, but yeah, you can do either. There is a save as function in Thermal Studio, and also when you do those batches, it copies them, so it never overwrites the original images. So it always keeps those in the back. So you'll get a separate folder with all the batch with the batch output.
If you want to ask another question too, what you guys can do is click the yes button. There's a check mark button there on the participants panel that will at least tell me that you've got a question, and I can unmute you and we can ask that as well. Looks like we do have some others that are looking forward to possibly a template webinar. And so maybe we could do something here for next week that's dedicated on that, Jason, if we have the time.
Yeah, we can do that.
I'm getting a lot of questions about FLIR Tools Plus and the support of that going forward. What have you heard, I guess, if you have FLIR Tools Plus in terms of transferring license or whatever? I wasn't sure, but I wanted to ask you what you've heard. What's the latest on that?
Tools Plus is going to be supported as long as we can support it, but I doubt that there'll be any changes to it, certainly nothing major. So if you're looking at buying something like more advanced than FLIR Tools, I would definitely look at Thermal Studio. So I haven't heard of any specifics on that. That's just my feeling at this point. They're sort of, I don't know, kind of put a lot of resources into Thermal Studio and trying to improve that and add features to that. It's a pretty good product. But again, there's Tools Plus, it'll work. If it still works, they'll still support it if you have questions. So.
Looked like Stephen Perry was asking about a stitch feature. Is that correct, Stephen? Just want to get you on that. The stitching of the images, it was almost like a panorama. Was that the question?
My feeling on that is it'll probably be added as a plugin in the future to Pro. That's just my opinion. I haven't heard anything specific on it.
We do have Jason Howarth, by the way. Jason Howarth of FLIR Systems is on, and he did offer, and I'm going to chat this out to everybody, his email. And if you have questions about compatibility, upgrades, pricing, and all that, it's really best to go through him. I've just sent that out to everyone there. So if you want to email Jason for that, because we don't actually have that information, but I'm sure he'll be able to help you out with that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Any other questions from anybody this afternoon? I'm not seeing anything else in chat, but I just want to make sure we're getting everybody's questions. We don't have anywhere to be except for work, so we can hang on for a bit. If you want to hang on with us as well, we can certainly take more questions. But it looks like we're getting a lot
and also
of feedback.
remember the support side.
Did you want to show that quickly? Is that something you have the ability to? The website, bring it up, or? I might be getting optimistic here with Jason's internet connection. I don't know. It looks like we have lost Jason, perhaps. Let me send out his email so you guys can go directly to Jason. It's jason.gagnon@FLIR.com. I will send that out. I'll also send out my email as well, matt.schwingler@infraredtraining.com. That is in the chat field. If you want to send us an email, we'll certainly get back to you. If we missed your question here, we'll get back to you here sometime today. I think for now, just given the, it looks like we lost Jason. That's okay, but we did wrap up the presentation. I think we'll wrap up today's webinar here on the basics of Thermal Studio. As I mentioned, Bill Schwan will be back here tomorrow at 11 o'clock Eastern for the SUAS webinar. A little bit different setup, but I think it should go really well. So we'll have Bill back here. And then next week, let's plan to have maybe a template session, which we might involve also Paul Frisk, who's out of ITC in Canada. We might have Paul on here as well. But we'll have the recording later here today. It was great working with everybody. Really wanted to thank you for joining us. Hope it worked out well. We'd love to hear your feedback. Send us an email, drop us a chat, whatever. But we'll see you online again here soon. Thanks again. Take care and enjoy the rest of your day.